Hello there today, everybody in the Leadership Institute for the National Center for Biotechnology Education, InnovateBIO. We're very excited here today because we have with us Dr. Celeste Carter, who is the division lead for the NSF Advanced Technological Education Division. Welcome, Celeste.
Thank you very much, Russ. It's nice to be here.
Dr. Carter, we also have Tom Tubon from Madison Community College, who you know very well, who is my co-PI on Goal 3, which is the workforce for InnovateBIO, which is led by Dr. Linnea Fletcher out of Austin Community College. And we're just delighted to have you here today. Tom?
Great to see you, Russ. Dr. Carter, it's a pleasure to have you on board. Thank you very much for your time today.
Well, thank you both for inviting me.
And as usual, we have our trusty media technician, Sean Killebrew, at the helm here. So as we like to say, if it looks good when the Leadership Institute fellows see this, it's because of Sean.
Thank you, Sean.
Dr. Carter, we're delighted that InnovateBIO has been funded by the NSF ATE as a National Center for Biotechnology Education. We actually are very, very excited with respect to this Leadership Institute because it means so much to us in terms of the next generation of leaders. I'm going to turn it over to Tom, and he's going to actually ask you a couple of questions, and then it'll come back to me and I'll ask you a couple of questions. So without further ado, Tom.
Thanks, Russ. Dr. Carter, for many of us who run in the ATE circles, you need no introduction at all. Your contribution is tremendous. But for the benefit of the folks that we have for the Leadership Institute, we're hoping that you'll be able to share a little bit of your background and your role with the NSF ATE with our participants. So if you wouldn't mind sharing us, giving us a little bit of background about yourself and sharing with us some of the scope of your work.
Sure, and thank you. I was thinking about this question. I was thinking, well, where do I start? And I thought, well, given the fact that we're still in the midst of this pandemic, maybe one of the things I could start with is that by education and training, I'm a virologist. So my doctoral research was actually looking at the cell-mediated immune response to viral infections. And those, everyone's talking about the coronavirus spike. Well, that's a glycoprotein. And I think the title of my thesis was the role of glycoproteins in the cell-mediated immune response to herpes simplex viruses. So I started that way and then moved on to postdoctoral research at the University of California, Berkeley, and there I moved into retroviruses and oncogenes, and the cell proteins that oncogenes interacted with that impacted a cell moving from a normal cell to a cancer cell, basically. So if you'd asked me at that point in time, did I see myself moving into a 2-year community or technical college, I would have said, well, no, I really like this, what I'm doing in research. It was one of those times where life kind of intervened. And I had a daughter who actually I can say is now 33 years old and just finished her doctorate in marine biology at Scripps and is working on the Hill. She's working for NOAA. But be that as it may, stepping back, I looked around and there was an opportunity to apply for a position at Foothill College in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is a 2-year college. And it was actually to teach microbiology. And I thought, well, I could do that. And I went through the whole interview process and went in to talk to the dean after I'd gone through a couple of rounds. And she thanked me very much and said they were so impressed with my CV and me, but they weren't going to offer me the job because they said, well, you're a researcher, not a teacher. So we've offered the position to another candidate who interviewed who has experience teaching. And so I was getting ready to say well, thank you so much for the opportunity to interview and gracefully exit and then rethink what the next step would be. And the dean said, well, we've had on the books for several years this biotechnology program, this idea of these entry-level technician positions, and we haven't been able to get anybody who could really get this off the ground and get it running. Do you think you could do that? And thinking about it, not realizing a few of the things I was getting myself into, I said, "Oh, sure, you know, I've taken technicians sort of under my wing in a research lab and mentored them through working in the lab, and I think being very productive people." And she said, "Oh, well, fine." This was Friday afternoon. She said, "Classes start on Monday." And I went, "What?" And she said, "Yes, yes." And well, you know, there's a few more calls I'll have to make this afternoon. I'm not sure you're actually going to be teaching on Monday, but that's when everything is supposed to start. And by the way, here's a whole bunch of curriculum outlines of what you're supposed to be doing. And so I left, still not knowing if I was going to be starting. Long story short, I did start. I did a whole bunch of things that, looking in retrospect, people probably would have been wringing their hands. The first thing I did was look at all the curriculum outlines and go, well, this isn't how I would work with someone who wanted to go into an entry-level position in a lab, regardless of whether it was industry or a basic research lab at an institution. So I tore them all up and put them in the garbage. And then I sat down and rewrote everything. And basically, kind of sort of by the seat of my pants for the first couple of years, built the curriculum, as well as getting the program going and getting industry people working with me. So all of that started in basically in 1994, led to me applying to the ATE program and receiving an award. That led to me moving into a rotator position at the National Science Foundation, which is, you go to the National Science Foundation for, these days it's anywhere from 1 to 4 years. An award is made to your home institution, so you don't lose any retirement benefits or anything like that, but you have the opportunity to work in Washington, D.C. at the National Science Foundation, which is a pretty amazing professional development opportunity. That led to me then heading back to California, picking up my program again, and then eventually coming back as a permanent program officer in DUE. I came back in 2009, specifically to work as the lead program officer on the ATE program. The program officer in DUE who had established the program, Dr. Elizabeth Tellis, was retiring. And basically had tapped me and said, you know, you really need to apply for this position. So kind of a roundabout way of moving from research into teaching, into a more of a national role, and then going back to teaching, and then moving back here to DC. I do still remember when one of the other program officers stuck his head in my office like the first week I was there, and he said, "Well, do you realize you aren't going to be going home this time?" And I said, "Well, yes, because guess what? I just finished selling my house in San Jose, and I bought a house in Alexandria." So that's kind of in a I hope a nutshell, a little bit about me and who I am.
So Celeste, that's a great story with the background and a good way to capture your experience and all you bring to the table. I'm going to give you a throwback to something that I've done also that might be something you haven't heard about in years. So I worked in my graduate program on BP16 and herpes simplex virus. So we worked on that complex as well.
I didn't know that.
Transcription. Yeah, so I haven't talked about that in many years, but it's always something that helps us build on top of to get to the point where we are right now. So our experiences are who we are. But I also wanted to ask you another question, and this question has to do with what you've just heard about from Russ through about the Leadership Institute, and perhaps what you would like these new aspiring leaders that we're recruiting to our program to know about ATE.
So I am so excited that InnovateBIO and that Russ, you and Tom are doing this effort of pulling the Leadership Institute together and running it, really quite a few years ago now, in conversations with various people in the ATE community, we kind of would look around at each other and go, well, we're all getting a little bit older here. Who's coming up that's going to start taking our place and move forward and sort of drive where things are going to go within the entire ATE program. Obviously here we're thinking specifically about biotechnology. And so there was I actually inserted into the solicitation for ATE a call for people to think about and maybe craft a project around growing the next generation of leaders. You know, who's going to step up as one after another of us starts retiring and, I don't know, sitting on the beach somewhere with a drink with a little parasol in it or whatever we want to do. I don't know whether we're going to do that because I think most of us flunk retirement. We don't actually really leave what we're doing. But I think that this Leadership Institute is a tremendous opportunity, a professional development opportunity for people to start thinking about who they are, their strengths and weaknesses, and where they, you know, where hopefully they would like to go. And I know that for all of us, you know, you hit certain points in your life where it's sort of an intersection, and you have an opportunity to make a choice. You know, coming here, moving permanently to the DC area and working at NSF. I could have stayed at Foothill. I was a tenured faculty member there. I could have continued to run a program and teach. But then I had this opportunity to come back to something that I felt was very, very important, very challenging, especially to take over the leadership of the program. And so, you know, hopefully for everybody who participates in this institute, they'll think about the opportunities that they have. And maybe as they come to these critical junctures, all of you can think about what's really important to you. Where do you see yourselves going? What do you feel are your strengths? What would you like to contribute? So I think that that's one of the things I'm very excited about as far as the Leadership Institute goes. With the ATE program itself, it's been around. It's a fairly long-running program at the National Science Foundation. Congress is extremely interested in this program. Even though the Senator Barbara Mikulski has retired, Congressman David Price is still in Congress, and he asks every year, how are things going with ATE? And those two people were very responsible for the act that was then signed into law that had NSF create this program. It's about workforce development. It's about educating our skilled technical workforce. And for that, I just think it's critically important. I think that, you know, everything that we do in the classroom with students of thinking, basically, I used to tell people, they'd say, well, what is this program? You know, I'd meet friends that were at four-year institutions. They'd say, what are you doing with this program? You know, what are you doing at a two-year institution? And I'd say, I'm educating scientists. And they said, you can't do that at a two-year institution. And I said, why not? I'm doing it. And the students are great. They're amazing. So ATE really is about supporting students, moving them forward in their goals and their career pathway. And I think at the same time, then it impacts all of us as well as faculty, administrators, whoever you are. Gives you lots of thought, you know, lots of things to think about. So ATE is a great program, 28 years now. So we want to keep it going.
Dr. Carter, I cannot agree with you more about how great the ATE program is. You've shed some light on your side of the equation here, which is coming from the ATE side administratively and from NSF. And I can say that coming from our sides where we're talking about project administration and awards, it has really been a game changer in terms of providing opportunities for students and faculty, professional development, and growth in industry partnerships. And so you know, I can't speak enough of the value that ATE brings. So I'm going to pass this over to Russ, and I think Russ has a couple of questions that he has lined up for you.
Yeah, I do. But, you know, before I jump into the question, I have to remind myself that I was a herpes simplex industry guy. with the development of acyclovir, and as we would like to say, the first effective oral antiviral and safe antiviral.
That's
And
right.
Celeste, Dr. Carter, you and I have had those conversations. Tom, we haven't had those to a large degree, but they shall continue. Yeah. Dr. Carter, what a very, very good response that you gave my colleague, Tom Tubon. And I'd like to take this career path that you've had and relate it back to these people that will be taking the Institute. The fact that you jumped around, the fact that you took some risk, can you tell these Leadership Institute fellows, participants, a little bit more what was going on in your head and what advice you'd have for them in terms of what comes in front of you and what you need to be thinking about?
Yeah, that's actually a tougher question, because when I think about it, I think at some point in time, people will say, well, when I first came to NSF as a rotator, I would have other program officers who would come up to me and they'd say, we've seen your CV. What are you doing at a community college? And not meaning to be judgmental, but in a way it was very judgmental. It was, why aren't you, you were at Harvard, you were at Berkeley, you're doing this, you're doing that. What are you doing at a 2-year institution? And my response really is, it's those intersections in life. Life happens, and so they can be very, very challenging. But if you can sit down and think through it and think about the opportunities that a challenge provides you, which is hard, right? Because people don't really like to change. It's easier to kind of get into a situation. I remember the person who was teaching anatomy and physiology at my home institution was very proud of the fact that he had been teaching for many, many years. He didn't use any notes. He basically knew exactly when to pause in a lecture because he knew when a student would ask a specific question. And, I thought about that and I thought, that obviously has been very satisfying for this person. He has been very, very successful with his students. They get through A&P. They do well in a lot of the allied health programs. It would drive me crazy. It really would. I mean, I have to say, one of the things in biotechnology is you cannot sit on your hands. You both know that. Every single time you teach a class, something has changed. Some new advance has been made, new information is available, new ways to think about a problem are there. And if you're going to keep your students up to date, you have to be thinking, you have to be changing. And I like that. It makes for a lot of work, but I also find that it's very, very satisfying. So I think thinking about pathways and moving through and how you do things, I think that you often want to take the challenging position or path, even though it's going to be more work, at least for me. And I guess I think that would be one of the things I think that's important to think about. I also see it as a way to present to all of the students and people that you impact in your life that you're a lifelong learner. And that's certainly something that, more and more as we look at the world around us, the way technological changes are impacting all of us, you can no longer go and have a single job and they're going to give you a gold watch 50 years later when you retire, right? It doesn't happen that way. I mean, I know even more than 20 years ago, I would send my students to the Career Center in Palo Alto just to, kind of check things out, see what's going on, find out what a career counselor there could tell you in comparison to a counselor on our institutional grounds. And they would come back and they'd say, wow, they're telling us we're going to have at least 3 careers in our life already. And I'd be like, well, what do you think? You think that's actually accurate? And they go, They were pretty convincing. We think that's pretty accurate. And I said, then right from the start, think about how you want to position yourself as you move through the various things that you're thinking that are exciting. And I think that really needs to apply to all of us. And we just need to keep that in mind. And you never know when things are going to happen. Sometimes it's really kind of serendipity. One thing I didn't say in that my sort of introduction of who I am was I had no aspirations to move to the Washington area and work at the National Science Foundation. I really liked my program. The students were amazing. And Dr. Elaine Johnson, right, who was the head of BioLink, called me up just out of the blue, and she said, "Hey, Celeste, I was talking to one of the program officers at the National Science Foundation, Dr. Duncan McBride, and it turns out that the person who is doing the biotech stuff for the ATE program just took a job with the House Science Committee, and they really need somebody who understands biotech from the two-year institutions. You need to call Duncan today." And I sort of stepped back and I went, "Oh, where did this one come from?" Elaine goes, "I really think you do a good job with this." So I sat back. I don't think I called him that day, but I thought, oh, what the heck? I'll call him up. And I introduced myself over the phone. And he did a little bit of shuffling. He said, "Well, we've already interviewed a couple of people and it's a little bit late in the year." And then he paused and he said, "Why don't you fly out here next week and give us an interview? Talk to us about who you are and what you've done and interview with us." So that's sort of a thing. I didn't have a plan for that. And yet, when I look at it, it's been a phenomenal opportunity for me. In addition to leading the ATE program, I have been working with the National Council for the American Worker at the White House, the Office of Science and Technology Policy. I'm involved with the Manufacturing USA Institutes. There's been just a tremendous number of things and opportunities that have come my way, in a way, all because of a phone call. So, so you never know.
Well, thank you, Dr. Carter, for that very comprehensive answer and outlook. I think our Leadership Institute participants, fellows, will really, really be excited by that. So we're down to the wire here, and we have one more question for you. And it's really, and thank you for being so open with us. And let me remark on what Tom said, which is, I think I've known you for a dozen years, and I've had several projects with you, and I'm just amazed. And because we're doing this Leadership Institute, and this is just a little bit of a side, we're finding out what it takes to be a leader. But I got to tell you that there are very few people that I put in the category of what I call great leaders. And I've been working for several, and I've worked with many who weren't. They didn't fit in that category, but you fit in that category. And I got to tell you, I don't know if it's just that we have a herpes simplex background, but whenever I send you a quick email, if I don't get an answer within an hour, I'm sitting there saying she's probably not there today.
Yeah.
So and the other point that I just want to make before we go into the last part is it's very obvious when we congregate, and unfortunately because of the pandemic we can't do that, but you exhibit those qualities of a leader that I put in the very high category, which is you're open to everybody. You want to be able to help and guide people. You're very, very much a servant leader, but you also you don't exclude anybody, which is really amazing. And I just want to congratulate you on that, and tell you that from somebody who came from industry and somebody who had some really great leaders that I worked with and worked for, that's a great attribute. So congratulations on having that. Now, the last question I have before I turn it back to Tom is, do you have a personal message, that you would like to give to these Leadership Institute participants, fellows, that you'd like to leave them with?
Yes, and this may seem a little it's not really off topic. To me, it's the critical topic, which is think about what your ideals are for you as for each of you as you move forward in your career pathway, and be persistent, which is something we tell our students, right? One of those things we tell our students: you're going to run into roadblocks. Um, Meet a challenge and look at it as an opportunity. And for all of you, think about the opportunities that you have to support students reaching their goals. And I know, to me, that is still priceless. One of the things I love about the ATE Principal Investigators Conference every year is that we have anywhere from 60 to 70 students coming. And they all have their individual stories. They all have had obstacles to overcome. And seeing them and reaching out to them and talking with them is always a highlight for me. I know that I had one student who was a single Latina mom. She had a 2-year-old when she was going through my biotech program. And 13 years, I was already back here at NSF. She tracked me down. She sent me an email and she said, "Dr. Carter, I'm not sure if you remember me." And I did remember her, because one of the things we did was, when childcare fell apart, we would take turns outside the lab taking care of the children that couldn't be at the childcare center. So I remembered her, and I remembered her little boy. And she said, "I just wanted to let you know that not only did you change my life, I'm still in biotech and I love my job, but," she said, "you changed the next generation." She said, "My 15-year-old is already looking at colleges and he wants to major in chemistry." And she said, "I want to thank you for that, because it was stepping into your classroom that made the change for me and also for my son." So I think that thinking about being a leader, moving forward on whatever your pathway is, you don't always have easy choices to make, but continue to challenge yourself. You know, be the type of person that shows all of the people around you what a lifelong learner is, and someone who can rise to an occasion and actually make a positive impact. So I think that would be my message.
Well, that's a great message, and I thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to Tom.
Dr. Carter, those are wise words, and I think that everyone benefits from those words that you've just shared. I, for one, am grateful for your background in the biosciences, because it allows us to really communicate at a level to understand what we go through in our laboratories, in our workday, in our workflow. But beyond that, what really blows my mind is that you also oversee workforce development in areas like mechatronics, IT, and cybersecurity, among many, many others. And so the number of hats you wear, the responsibilities that you shoulder as part of your role with ATE are tremendous, and they're very impressive. I wanted to say thank you on a personal note and on behalf of the Leadership Institute for your advocacy for STEM workforce development. And we appreciate your push for transformational change, because I think that's exactly what you've been doing since 2009. Our Leadership Institute folks are going to be extremely thrilled to hear from you, because you represent the nexus of what it is that, at least in my opinion, it takes to be a true leader. So thank you, Dr. Carter. I appreciate your time, and I'm going to hand it back to Russ.
Thank you.
And I just echo what Tom said. And thanks very much, Dr. Carter.